So this is basically with respect to defining the structure of the dimension properties and adding the properties, going and changing the structure, adding the hierarchies and changing the hierarchy values as and when it is required. Unlike your BW system, whatever you want to create it as a parent node, that should be a valid member of your master data ID. In your in your BW system, you can create a hierarchy with a text node, which is not part of your normal master data. But in BPC, whatever hierarchy node you are creating, that should be a valid member ID. Then only you can create it as a hierarchy node. Otherwise, system will not allow you to create. That is why data entry happens at your base level, roll-ups happens at your top node, which is a valid ID. Since BW is only a reporting system, then there is no data entry happening in the BW system. It allows a text node to happen to be a parent node. But in wherever the input is possible in SAP systems, either in ECC or BPC systems, a top node should also be a valid member in your ID section. Suppose if I am putting BS999 here. Okay, which is not available in my ID at all. My ID closes with BS223. I am putting BS999, which is not there at all in my ID. Now try to save and process. See, it will throw up an error. BS999 in hierarchy H1 does not exist. That means this value does not exist in your ID at all. So if it is available in ID, then only it will be created as a hierarchy node. This is very, very important comparing to your BW architecture. Now, if I want to see a particular value, I can search it using this toggle search. Once I go into that particular ID, this toggle search will open. Click on that, and then you can do your normal search. Put something and enter. It will show whatever starting with PL. Like this, you can search on any of the property value or ID or description or any of the things. So in BPC master data, the search will be like this. So whatever you're seeing in the ECC screens, if you want to see the list of chart of accounts, then you have to go to the search button and you have to put the numbers. It's very difficult job. You have to put the while character and then by company code. All those things will not be there in the BPC system. It is a simple search which will be available like Excel. Yeah, PS is having a question. Going forward, we will always have to type the questions. Can we ask them instead of typing? Going forward, they will allow you to speak through mic also. After for one class or two classes, they will enable that, I think. Then you can directly ask the question by raising hand also. Or if you can just type that I want to ask the question, I will unmute you so that you can talk. Rajiv is having a question. Can one member ID be assigned to two parent hierarchies? Rajiv, how do you think it is practically possible? This is one member ID. There is only one column available. So how can you assign it to two things? So practically, whatever you are asking is not at all possible. If Kamlesh is having a question, if you want to use hierarchy, then naming convention becomes very important. Yeah, generally, yeah, it is any hierarchy, whether you take BPC system or your ECC system, any place the master data means the naming convention is very, very important, based on which your entire structure will depend. Always I will say that naming convention is very, very important. Raj, I did not get you. What is the Define ID range means what? I did not get you. The ID can be any of the characters. The 32 characters is the length which is provided by SAP. So within 32 you can use anything, either number, digits, whatever you want. Yeah. That BS 000, BS 999, I have defined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 also. So it is up to me what I want to write in the ID section. So if your GL account is 10001, then you can put 10001 as your GL account. So that depends upon client master data, how they are maintaining. The same way we can replicate in the BPC system. Here only I have just shown you how to update the master data in ABC underscore account dimension. You can directly type it here, or you can load it through BW system, which we have already discussed. A lot of people ask the question, like from BW direct load into master data is possible or not. Kamlesh is having a question. How do we manage if the balance is credit, then it is a liability, and if it is debit, it becomes an asset? See Kamlesh, it is very simple. I'll ask you one question. You are having an expense account which is showing a minus value. What it refers to? Same thing. Expense value will be generally plus. If it is showing as minus, that means there is some refund that has happened towards that expense. So whatever is the value your SAP has in your FI system also, if you go and see expense account, it will be shown as plus value. Wherever there is a refund, that will be shown as minus value. That means you have excessively received more than what you have expended. It is similar to that. Yeah, retained earnings can be negative or positive. If it is negative, it is a loss. If it is a positive, it is a profit. It will be grouped under shareholders' equity. So if it is a profit, it will add back to your shareholders' equity. If it is a negative, it will reduce your shareholders' equity. See Kamlesh, if you are working in accounting, see, by mere change of the value, you will not group it differently. See, if I'm having a retained earnings account, I'll be grouping under equity section only. So if it is a plus value, it will add back to my equity. If it is a minus value, it will reduce my equity. For 1 month, if I am getting a negative value, that doesn't mean that I have to take this and group it into a different section. It is not like that. So for that particular month, that account is having a negative value. For next month, it might be the positive value. So you cannot group it month on month wise, the groupings cannot be changed. So it's more of a functional thing which you are asking. It's normal your accounting practice which will happen generally. Sometimes you will be having a creditor account where you will be, or something you are having accounts payable. You have paid excess. Then what happens? It will show with a negative value. Then you will be grouping in the same thing. Yeah, that is what I am saying. In SAP FI system, because it is only a reporting system at individual line item basis, you will be doing that. But once it comes to planning system, which we are doing at the GL balance level, we will not do the grouping at all. We will be adding it to that particular section only. Okay. PS is having a question. Is this more of a functional or technical course? PS, this is not a functional or technical course. What I can say is BPC is a product which have technical requirement as well as functional requirements. So if you want to do a BPC project, you should have a person with a functional background, a person with technical background. both supporting can do a BPC project. This is similar to if you are working in FI. FI will be having normal finance background people, functional requirements will be there. But if there is any enhancement required, they need an ABAPO help. Like that, here also a combination of functional aspects and a combination of technical aspects will be grouped and be called as BPC product, which will be delivered. So for BPC, both technical consultant and functional consultant requirement is required. My background is a functional consultant, but nearly I worked in 8 to 9 projects with technical consultants, so I more of a thing, I know the technical aspects also. So whenever I am explaining to my technical consultant, I need to understand how they are writing the things and all. I am basically a certified FI BPC consultant along with a chartered accountancy background, and I am also having BCS and ECCS knowledge also, which is the consolidation previous modules. Yes, PS is having a question. We'll be taking EPM reporting. Yeah, see, when it comes to BPC, as we discussed in our demo class also, what are all the contents we are going to cover. So exhaustive BPC related things including reporting, consolidation, advanced consolidation topics will be going to cover. Consolidation method will not be different as such from BCS, but the way you depict the values like ownership, maintenance of ownership manager, and maintenance of the business rules will totally differ from BCS. The screens will totally differ. But as such, the accounting treatment will never change, but how you depict and how you use the functionality will totally differ. Yeah, you can use it for any of the thing. See, budgeting or planning is not specific. You can use it for any of the thing. Kamlesh, it is simple. If I can do a consolidation directly in Excel, why do I want SAP at all? So if you want to have more automated thing compared to your consolidation, which is your existing consolidation, then you want to go for an advanced kind of a thing and more user-friendly kind of a things, you have to go for BPC kind of a thing. If you want to stick to the old things, still SAP does ECCS, which is your FI consolidation, and SAP has stopped supporting FI consolidation ECCS. So if there is any problem when you are doing consolidation, if there is, you have struck up, then you are lost. Sandeep is having a question, do we need in-depth knowledge of BW? No, Sandeep, as we discussed, in-depth knowledge of BW is still not required, but some of the BW knowledge is required, which we are going to cover in our training classes. But if you are a BW consultant, along with BW knowledge, if you are having BPC, then you will be given more preference towards a technical consultant for the BPC projects, because you are already having the core BW knowledge, which is the backend for BPC, and also the BPC concept knowledge. Kamlesh is having a question, SAP SCM is meant for consolidation, correct? No, Kamlesh, it is not exactly the consolidation. SCM is called SCM suite, which is having BCS, business consolidation, management cockpit, statistical statistical reporting. There is profitability and cost management. One more product is there. So SCM is called a suite. Under that, consolidation is one module. Like EPM is called one suite. EPM has BPC, SSM, PCM, FC, disclosure management. So these are the different tools under EPM category. So EPM is mainly, you can call it as category. Under that, sub versions will be BPC, SSM, like that. Does the knowledge of BPS and IP help in learning this? I can say from functional perspective, BPS and IP knowledge will be very helpful, but from the screens perspective, BPS and IP screens are totally SAP screens, but now whatever you are learning will be basically through Excel based tools. So the screens will be different, but the functionality will help you in learning the BPC. Sandeep is a question. I started my career as CO consultant and then moved to BW, and past 5 years BW BPS consultant completed. So will BPC help me? So based on your knowledge, I think BPC will help you. You can do more towards planning projects because you are already having CO experience with BW and BPS also. So for planning projects, your experience will be very, very good. Okay, going back to our dimensionalities. So as we discussed, these are the types of dimensions SAP has provided. So when we are discussing, each type of dimension will have certain role to play. We have planning and consolidation as two different topics. So first we'll start with planning related activities. Why I say planning related activities means whatever we are learning till consolidation, those topics will be used in planning as well as consolidation projects. After that, whatever we will be learning in consolidation, that is only specific to consolidation, including the concepts which you used in the planning application. So we'll start with planning related functionalities, and then once we go into consolidation, the existing planning related functionalities and consolidation specific functionalities will be used in consolidation projects. So our training will be with all the concepts of planning, which is security rules, business rules. This is not particularly planning, which is applicable for both planning as well as consolidation. But when we are discussing, we'll create a planning cube and we'll discuss all the functionalities. So there are some of the dimensions which are specific to consolidation. So when we log in into the consolidation section, at that time, I'll explain each of the consolidation related dimension in detail and how it will help in consolidation, because those are majorly specific towards consolidation. Little bit consolidation accounting knowledge will be helpful in understanding those dimensionalities. Now I'll discuss one by one which is applicable for planning related thing. One is account dimension, which we have already seen. Account dimension will start with type A. So what is there in the account dimension is nothing but your chart of accounts and what is the account type. If you want to have currency conversion, then rate type is also mandatory, because based on the rate type only your currency conversion will happen. And then hierarchy you can define, and any other additional properties you can maintain in your BPC system. You can maintain that additional properties. What is the requirement to create additional properties is you can bring these additional properties in your reporting when you are reporting in your Excel. That option is also available. Suppose if I am having entity as a dimension, for each entity it is belonging to certain region. So 2-3 entities belonging to a region. So I can bring that region property also into the reporting. So I can view the data by entity wise or by summarize it region wise also using the property value. For those purposes you can maintain the properties. That is first thing. And second thing, there are mandatory properties by SAP which you need to maintain. And third is the properties which are required for consolidation. In order to work on consolidation, certain properties are mandatory. For those purposes you need to have properties. So these are the three main purposes why we use properties in the BPC system. And then audit trail, which is more of a consolidation related thing. When we are discussing on consolidation, we will discuss in detail. And then the next one is category. What is category is nothing but your way of representation of data. Actual data, planned data, forecasted data, budgeted data. In order to segregate the different types of data into the BPC system, we use a term called category, which is nothing but version in your BW system. Generally what happens in your ECC, only one data is available, that is actual data. But when it comes to BPC system, you can do planning, forecasting, and then budgeting also. So I have reported say 1000 as my budgeting profit. My forecasted profit might be 900. My planned profit might be 1500. So I need to show the different data separately in order to have variance analysis between actual versus budget, or budget versus plan, or budget versus forecast. In order to segregate the data and store it separately, I need to have a category dimension. So the other properties, some of the properties are mandatory and some of the properties are not mandatory. In order to understand what are all the mandatory properties, as we discussed, we can go into the structure of the dimension and then see whichever is in the blue color is the mandatory. Even though the year is mandatory, no need to maintain the year value. It's only a mandatory property. If you want, you can maintain, or if you don't want, you can leave it blank also. But if you see in account type, if you are not maintaining the rate type, system is automatically throwing up errors. So that is why I said these property value maintenance you will get by experience. And other properties are not that much mandatory. According to requirement, you can use it or you can leave it as blank. There are so many properties which you will be leaving it as blank in BPC system. Yeah, Apte is having a question, can we add properties later in the config? Properties can be added at any point of time. When you are completing your development also, you can add the properties. There is no problem at all. And you can keep on updating the properties as and when it is required. Sometimes technical consultant will be using properties in order to bring it into their logic section also. For that purpose also, they will create some additional properties. And in reporting, if you want to segregate some of the templates based on the some property values, you will create some additional properties also. So the property creation in the configuration will be a never-ending process. Till you complete your development, it will be keep on adding. And then next is entity dimension, which is with E property. Generally, entity dimension is your, if you are working in consolidation, it will be your legal entity, or if it is a management consolidation, either it is a business area related consolidation or profit center consolidation, depending upon your requirement. Generally, we'll keep entities as the entity dimension values, which will be used for segregating the data entry based on the entity wise. So here also, for each entity, we need to identify what is the currency in which it is working. This is similar to your FI system also, where you will be specifying the entity currency. Here also you will be specifying what is the entity currency. And if you go to the structure of the dimension, if you see the control level, control currency, not LC, currency is the mandatory properties. Out of that currency property you can maintain, other things you can leave it blank also. And hierarchies also you can add hierarchy 1, hierarchy 2 depending upon your requirements. And here there is one more thing called referential integrity. This I will discuss after discussing all the dimensional properties and values, so that at that point of time you will be understanding the other dimensions also, so that at that time I can discuss the referential integrity in detail. Yeah, Salahuddin is having a question. I am sorry, if entity would be a company code, right? Yeah, generally it will be company code. It can be sometimes if you are working in planning scenarios, it can be cost center, profit center, business area, region, anything. But in consolidation, generally the legal entity will be taken as company code. But it is not hard and fast rule. It can be anything based on which either your planning or consolidation is taking place. That will be treated as entity dimension. No, Humphrey. Humphrey is having question, if dimensions are qualified with alphabet C, D, E, does that mean you have limited dimension? No, Humphrey. Once I complete the dimensions and everything, you will be able to understand all these questions will be answered. Okay, so these are the entities with respect to which the currencies will be maintained, and this is the hierarchy. If you want to view it in hierarchical view, go to hierarchical view. So world is the top node, under that Africa, under that Algeria and South Africa, like that. You can define the entity hierarchy also. And flow is mainly towards consolidation. Input currency. This is the value which is used in your BPC system to input data. So if I am having say 5 entities which are using Australian dollar, Singapore dollar, INR, SGD and USD, then those 5 currencies should be maintained in the input currency dimension. So whatever currencies I am maintaining in input dimension, only in those currencies I can do either planning or consolidation. So whatever is the currencies in which your company is dealing with, all those currencies should be part of your input currency dimension, which will start with R as a type of dimension. And M and D we will discuss when we are discussing on the currency conversion. At that point of time, you will understand more easily what it refers to. But at this point of time, this is similar to your ticker table maintenance. What is indirect code and direct code? This is similar to that notification. D is a direct code and M is an indirect code. Okay. Then intercompany is mainly towards consolidation. When we are discussing on consolidation, I'll discuss on this. O account, this is ownership related account, which is part of consolidation. I'll discuss at that point of time. And then reporting currency. This is very important property because even though I'm having 6-7 input currencies, globally I'll be reporting only at USD. So at that point of time, I want to know which are the currencies I am reporting globally. All my P&L should be maintained in that global currency, which is a reporting currency. Those currencies you need to maintain it as reporting currency values. And LC is the value for BPC system. Whatever you are entering the data, you will be entering the data in the LC only. System automatically identifies the value of the LC from the entity master data you have maintained in the BPC system. So when I am entering the data, I always use LC. But how the system knows which entity LC is what? That is based on my entity definition. So system identifies, if I select AU as my entity, system identify LC is equal to AUD. If I enter CA as my entity, system identifies CAD as my entity currency, that is equal to LC. So when we are discussing on the currency conversion, we can see how the system treats the LC value and converts it into the reporting currencies. So but the data entry at this point of time, you remember data entry always happens with LC in the BPC system. How the system knows what is the LC currency? Based on the entity property maintained in the currency property. Then R underscore account, which is rate application. As we discussed in accounts, we have rate type. closing rate, average rate, historical rate. Where these values will be maintained? That is maintained in R underscore account dimension. Average rate, closing rate, end rate, historical rate. So these values which are maintained in R underscore account only can be used in rate type property account. And this R underscore account is part of rate model which is used to do the currency conversions. R underscore entity is a entity which is used to store the exchange rates. Since exchange rates we cannot store it for only to a particular entity, exchange rate is at a global level, which is at a client level. It can be between any entity to any entity. That is why SAP puts R underscore entity at global level. This is the standard one which we will use in all the BPC projects, because it is at a client level. And scope dimension. Scope dimension is mainly used to do the consolidations, that is group consolidations, which we will discuss in the consolidation part. And then the time dimension. In BPC we maintain the time in this fashion, 2006.0102, like this. First we will maintain the months, 12 months, and then quarters, and then year. So when you enter the data at this level, automatic roll up to Q1, automatic roll up to the total. And description according to your requirement. Parent H1, 1, 2, 3 will be part of your Q1, 4, 5, 6 will be part of your Q2. And when you are mentioning, there is some mandatory properties you need to maintain, like base period. Sometimes some clients will use January to December as their accounting year. Then your first base period will be January. If your April is your first period, then April becomes 001 and your January will become set 11th period. Like that, Q1 will be 003, 006, 009, Q4 will be 12 and total will be 12. This is the same convention we need to use for all the years in BPC system. And we have to define what is the level. This is the month, this is the quarter, and this is the year. And the definition of these things will be very important, because background so many programs are running based on these properties. We cannot edit these values at any cost. And month number you need to specify what is the first month. If your April is your first month, the month number for April will become 1. So depending upon your accounting period, you can use the base period and month to define it as a first period. And period, January, February, March, like that. And then quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3 and total. And this time ID is used when we are working in EPM formulas in the reporting section. These time IDs will be very, very helpful. So we have to maintain the time ID in the system defined format. First 4 digits will be your year, next 2 digits will be month number, and last 2 digits will always be 0. Like that, 2006-01 represents January, 02 represents February. Like this, we have to keep on till the month ends. And then year in which it is representing. This year property will be linked to your category dimension, which we have seen, the year property. So for that purpose, we need to maintain the year value also. And we can see it in the hierarchical view as well. Year, quarter, and then month wise. If you want ID and description, ID and description. So like this, you have to maintain the time dimension. So till now, whatever we have defined is the type of dimension prefixed by SAP system. Apart from the predefined dimensions, there might be additional requirements like cost center, profit center, region, and sometimes some people will use unit of measurement. So there are lots of other dimensions when we are working in planning that might be required in order to know those details also when we are doing the planning. So how to capture those? We cannot fit into any of the type of dimension. Those things will be creating it as a user-defined dimensions. So user-defined dimensions, you can create any number. system will automatically create the number. Like if you see here, I have created product, region, cost center. If you create another dimension, it will be called as U4. So what is meant by user defined dimension? When you create a user defined dimension, system will not throw up any of the mandatory properties. The property maintenance is as per your requirement. You can create properties, or you don't require any properties also, it is okay. Only scaling will be created as a mandatory property. So other things, depending upon your requirement, you can maintain. All the user defined dimensions which is required at your planning level will be maintained in order to support your planning related requirements other than the dimensions which is specified by BPC system. So that is where the type of dimension is very useful in order to bring certain mandatory properties and assignments. And if there is any additional things you require for planning purposes or consolidation purposes, you create them as a user defined dimensions and use it in your modeling when you are doing the planning. So till now whatever I have explained using the existing dimensions, or you can copy the existing dimensions with the same type. But if I want to create a new one, I don't want the copy of anything, or I don't want to use the existing one, I can create a new one. Go to new. Okay. So when I'm creating new, I can select which type of dimension it is, whether it is account type dimension, category type, audit type, entity, group, intercompany, all the types are available. If it is not belonging to any of the type, you can define it as user defined and you can use it freely without any restrictions. Suppose if I am creating it as account type dimension, I'll just put create button. Okay, coming to questions, Mitesh is having a question. Do BPC has drop down when setting up this parameter? I did not get you, Mitesh. What is drop down for setting the parameters? Ganesh is having a question. Dimensions which you are explaining now are mandatory dimensions for BPC projects. Mandatory and non-mandatory project dimensions, we'll discuss it later, because for planning certain mandatory, for consolidation certain other dimensions are mandatory. At first we are discussing what is the dimensions that are available. After that, when we go on to the model section, we will discuss what is the mandatory at planning level, what is the mandatory at consolidation level separately. Shekhar is having a question. Can we have time dimension based on example K4? No, Shekhar, we will be maintaining time in the time provided format by BPC system. So fiscal year period variant, what you are creating is your for operational level, but when it comes to consolidation or planning, it will be at only 1 year you will be using. So like your operational system, you will not be having different fiscal year variants. It will be only one period, either April to March or Jan to December, or whatever is your first period to last period you have to maintain. Mitesh is having another question. I see same type is used for two different dimensions, account type A, but inside property is different. Yeah, as I said, Mitesh, so when we are discussing the other things, we will be able to know the other type of dimensions, how it is useful. So Shekhar, I hope I have answered your question with respect to fiscal year variant. Okay, so once I created account dimension, if you see here, account type and rate type property have automatically came along with the scaling. So other dimension properties which are required, I can add it going to the structure of the dimension. If you click on add, there are something required properties for consolidation, required properties for ownership. If you want required properties for consolidation, you can activate this. Automatically it will show what is the property required for consolidation, and you can save. Okay, so I'm going back to the members. So now I have created account type dimension. So it created account type and rate type, which is the mandatory properties for planning or consolidation. It has given those parameters. Similarly, I can create it as a user defined dimension. So I'll just put test. Okay, I'm creating this as a user defined dimension. So once you create it as a user defined dimension, if you see here test, it is showing only scaling, which is a mandatory property by BPC for any of the dimension. Apart from that, it is not showing anything. You can define any of the dimension. If you see here, the previously you are seeing add dimension, dimension required for consolidation, for ownership, it is showing separately. But here it is freely definable, and you can add any of the properties or any of the hierarchies according to your requirement. And if you see here, automatically system is giving U4, that is the next number, sequence number it will be giving. So depending upon your requirement, you can add any of the user defined dimensions which is required. Mitesh, you are talking about property value maintenance drop down. See, property value maintenance you are maintaining. How the system will provide a drop down here? Because these are your maintained values. How the system knows this is the drop down value I need to provide? System doesn't know. You have to maintain the values. So there is no option of drop down at all. Okay, like this system will create U1, U2, and latest one is U4. And you can delete the dimensions directly from here. And you can go and edit the members, either double click or go to edit member section and do the editing. You can go to the structure from here, or if you want directly from here, you can select, go to edit structure. From here also you can go to the edit structure. And here also, if there is any process required, you can directly do it from here, or you can go inside and do save and process. Suppose if I am putting 222, I'm just saving it, I'm not processing it. I can do the processing directly from here, or inside I can go and do the save and process. Both the options are possible. Since we have seen the earlier option previously, I am doing from processing directly from here. Do you want to take the environment offline? Select it as no. Account type I have not maintained, so it is throwing up error. So I can come and process from here. PS, I did not get your questions. Why we need these dimensions? See, dimensions are master data. So why we need it, I did not get your question at all. So if you want to work in FI, why we need a chart of account means it is a master data. Unless there is a master data, you cannot perform anything. So why we need a company code is, unless you know which company code you are working, you cannot do anything. So it's a master data. It is a requirement. And I'm not sure on exactly what your question is. Okay. Now, as I said, there is something called referential integrity. Now go to the account dimension. Go to the structure of the dimension. There is something called referential integrity. What is meant by referential integrity? If you see here the information button, the value of the property rate type can be checked against the member of the dimension called account A. That means I am saying referential integrity for rate type property referentially integrated with R underscore account dimension. What it refers to is I have a rate type property here. So whatever the value I am putting here, this should be a valid member in R underscore account, which is referentially integrated to this dimension. So if I go to R underscore account, I have average, closing, and historical. So if I am using any other thing in the account dimension rate type property, say I am putting COL, yes, and just putting it. Now you try to save and process, it will throw up an error because of referential integrity failure. Now see invalid value rate type, because whatever you are putting here in the rate type property should be a valid member in R underscore account dimension. How the system is identifying? Based on the structure you are maintaining. In the referential integrity column. Why this is mandatory? Because when you are doing the currency conversion, you are doing the currency conversion based on the rate types you are maintaining in R underscore account, where you are maintaining the exchange rates. So if that exchange rate is different from what you are maintaining in your account master, then the linking cannot be done. That is why SAP has provided that referential integrity in order to work on the currency conversions and different concepts. So that is why referential integrity is very, very important. And you have to maintain the referential integrity values also properly, then only you can able to process the dimensions. I think I have not changed it. Similarly, we have another referential integrity dimension called entity. So why entity has input currency as referential integrity? That means whatever you are maintaining in the currency property, this currency property value should be a valid member in input currency dimension. Why we are linking it to input currency? Previously when we discussed, whatever values you are putting in input currency, only those values your company can do the planning or consolidation. So if you are not having anything in the input currency level, the same thing cannot be maintained in the entity level, because you cannot do the planning at that currency level. That is why, in order to showcase that relationship, SAP is maintaining the referential integrity here. Now, we have discussed we can copy the existing dimension and we can create the new one according to your requirement, or you can modify the existing one, or we can create the new one. We have created the new one. Sometimes if you are creating new ones like account and entity, what is the problem is you have to maintain the referential integrity manually. Now if you go inside, go to the structure, see the referential integrity is not maintained if you are creating it as a new one. I have created ACC underscore Jan underscore 2015 through new option, not through copy option. If I have used the copy option, the referential integrity is already maintained by SAP according to the requirement. If I am not copying, if I am creating it as a new, for certain type of referential integrity dimensions like account, entity, category, you need to specifically maintain the referential integrity in order to work in the BPC system for this particular dimension. So now go here. I am referentially integrating with R underscore account. So this step becomes manual step when you create a new dimension from the new section wherever referential integrity is involved. Other things it doesn't matter because there is no referential integrity at all. Now for category also, if you see, it is referentially integrating with time. So in time dimension, what is the property? It is year property it is referring to. Now if you go to time dimension, there is property called year. So system will check whatever year you are maintaining, the same will be taken into the year property in the category dimension. Now if you go to this dimension, there is no referential integrity. So system has provided only certain dimensions with referential integrity property. Those needs to be mandatorily maintained in the BPC system when you are creating new ones. When you are copying it, system will automatically take care about that because you are copying the original structure as it is. But if you are creating a new one, you have to maintain it explicitly. So this is with respect to the different dimensionalities we can do it in BPC system and what each type of dimension does. And this is the dimensions which we have discussed is towards planning purposes. When we discuss on the consolidation part, we'll discuss the other consolidation related activities. So in our next class, we'll discuss how to create a model and how to assign the dimensions and what are all the mandatory dimensions, and then we can discuss on the web reporting part, how the web reporting will look like, how to create workspaces and all in our next class. So till that time it will be the basics till next class. So if you start practicing on your own now itself, it will be very helpful because we are having weekend classes. So from first, second class itself will be going into the subject directly. Sandeep is having a question. Oh, sorry. Rajesh is having a question. Referring to question on account type drop-down, we can prepare referential integrity list as well as to validate. I did not get your question, Raju. Referential integrity is mainly because there are certain system-defined processes and certain defined business rules are available which takes the cognizance of the referential integrity dimensions. Unless those are maintained properly, your business rules towards currency conversion transformations will not work properly. That is why SAP suggests to maintain the referential integrity suggested by SAP. You should not do any of your own referential integrities. It is suggested by SAP only should be taken into consideration. And Sandeep is having a question, what is the maximum length allowed for dimension? I did not get what is your question. For ID it is 32 characters. What is the length of the dimension? I did not get your point at all. Mitesh is having a question, can we have multiple references for different fields? As I said, Mitesh, this is system requirement. We can have the property defined by SAP system. You cannot define the referential integrity. Only SAP can define the referential integrity. You can choose only the dimension name, but the property is defined by SAP. So how can you define multiple properties when the system itself has defined the property value? You can choose only the dimensionality which you can refer to this property value, but not the multiple properties. And as I said, whatever system provided, don't try to change anything because it will have a lot of complications when you are working on the business rules, logics. It will create a lot of problems which you cannot identify what is the error. Yeah, Rajiv, you are asking also same question. So when I talk about referential integrity, as I clearly said, SAP has predefined dimensions with referential integrity. Only those things needs to be considered. Other things, system will not provide that option at all. And Salahuddin is having a question. For a new implementation perspective, I wanted to understand during the blueprint phase. I don't understand, Salahuddin, what is your point, but see, for BPC, as we discussed in our demo class also, it is more towards defining the processes in BPC system and understanding the each process how it works. Because unlike your ECC transaction systems, the projects will not be standardized. It will be based on the client requirement. Everything will keep on changing. So you cannot isolate like your transaction systems. The learning for the BPC system is based on each topic wise. Each topic wise example we'll discuss, and we'll discuss the possibilities and non-possibilities, and we'll discuss how it will support in the client related perspective. In that way only the analytical product training will happen. Regarding your another question, Salahuddin, what kind of information I need to gather from business? See, we are in the initial classes itself. So after discussing the entire BPC related concepts and all, then you yourself will be able to understand what questions it will come and what questions I can ask the client in order to get this information. So in the initial stage, you cannot able to decide anything. See, after learning certain things, okay, in order to get this, I need to ask this question to the client. All those things you will be gaining through experience only, you will be getting after learning the BPC concept. I think I am clear on your question, Salahuddin. Next question is from Ganesh. What may be the difference between BW InfoCube and BPC model? See, there is no difference between BW InfoCube and BPC model. Only thing is BPC is sitting on top of your BW system. In order to differentiate your normal BW cube with BPC cube, they are giving a different name nomenclature, and it will be created directly from the front end, not from the back end like your BW system. Yeah. As I said, Ganesh, so whatever BPC we are working, everywhere the configuration is required. In my first section itself, I said whatever we are doing the configurations, it will be under planning and consolidation administration section, which is nothing but our configuration screen. Okay, I think Salahuddin, I think I have answered your question. Yeah, tell me, Salah. Any other questions from anyone? Exactly, I don't know, Salahuddin, embedded BPC architecture and standard BPC architecture. As far as I know, BPC is having two things. One is if you are going for 10.1, the classic architecture and unified architecture. Classic architecture is nothing but 10.0, and unified architecture is combination with HANA with the BWIP, that is 10.1, which is only used for planning purposes, not for consolidation. So I am not sure on what is embedded BPC and standard architecture, but unified and classic is this one. We are going to learn BPC 10, which is covering both planning as well as consolidation. Shekhar is having a question from from BW perspective, do we have standard contents for BPC that needs to be installed in BW side? No, Shekhar. From BPC perspective, whatever we are creating from the front end automatically created from the back end as a BW cube. So from standard content perspective, we are nowhere taking the BW standard content at all. Once the data is available in the BW cubes from your ECC system, which is already available in your standard content using data sources, that data sources value only we are taking into BPC system. So there is no standard content for BPC directly. I am not sure on what this site is referring to. Frankly speaking, I have not gone through what you have told me. I have to look into that. It might be just a naming convention what they are giving. Yeah, implement standard and embedded SAP BPC is nothing but they are putting what you call standard content, I think. These are embedded, here it referring to embedded means when we are creating model, we are referring to the standard SAP structure. If you don't want to use standard structures and if you want to do it on your own, then you can go for embedded system, embedded architecture, where you have to define from each of the thing the relationship and everything from the scratch till the end you have to define. But I have not seen any person going for that kind of implementation till now. We are using the standard SAP practice where the relationships are maintained in the standard SAP by BPC system, and we are utilizing the standard things. If you are going for that kind of custom thing from scratch till end, you have to create everything on your own, including the business rule logics, maintenance of parameters, everything you need to do it from scratch. Based on the glance what I have seen from your information which you provided, it seems like that, but I have not seen anybody, even SAP is giving training on that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we can wrap up the session for today, and we'll meet in our next week class. Thank you everyone.